The moon was high in the sky, casting a pale light over the quiet village of Oduke. But the night was not peaceful. A cold wind swept through the trees, whispering secrets of danger. The people of Oduke huddled inside their huts, afraid to look outside. They knew something was coming, something that would change their lives forever. Ezemo, the village priest, stood in the center of the village, his heart pounding in his chest. His eyes were fixed on the forest beyond the village, where the sounds of drums echoed through the night. But these were not the drums of celebration, they were the drums of war. Suddenly the drums stopped. The silence was thick, almost suffocating. Then out of the darkness a figure emerged. It was a woman, tall and strong, with a crown of feathers on her head. Her eyes glowed like fire, and her face was set in a fierce expression. She was no ordinary woman. She was a warrior, a leader, and she was here for a purpose. Ezemo stood a step back, his hands trembling. "Who are you?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. The woman's gaze bore into him, unblinking. "I am Ijele," she said, her voice steady and firm. "I am the daughter of the great Oduke, the woman who will lead this village to victory." Ezemo's heart skipped a beat. Ijele was a name that struck fear in the hearts of many. She was a warrior like no other, trained in the ways of battle since she was a child, but she had disappeared many years ago, and the people of Oduke thought she was dead. "What do you want?" Ezemo asked, trying to keep his voice from shaking. "I have come to reclaim what is mine," Ijele said, her eyes never leaving his. "This village, this land, these people, they belong to me, and I will fight to protect them." Ezemo felt a chill run down his spine. He knew that Ijele was not here to ask for permission. She was here to take what she believed was hers, and nothing would stand in her way. The news of Ijele's return spread through the village like wildfire. The villagers gathered in the square, whispering and murmuring among themselves. Some were excited, hoping that Adaeze will bring the peace and prosperity they had longed for. Others were afraid, worried that her arrival would bring only war and destruction. Ijele stood before them, her presence commanding attention. She was dressed in the traditional attire of warrior, with a spear in her hand and a sword strapped in her back. Her eyes scanned the crowd, taking in every face, every expression. "My people," she began, her voice carrying across the square. "I know you are afraid. I know you have suffered, but I am here to tell you that the time for fear is over. The time for suffering is over. I have returned to lead you, to protect you, to fight for you." The crowd was silent, their eyes fixed on Ijele. She could see the fear in their eyes, but she could also see the hope, the longing for a leader who would stand up for them. "There are enemies at our gates," Ijele continued, her voice growing stronger. "They want to take our land, our homes, our families, but we will not let them. We will fight, we will defend what is ours, and we will win." A murmur of agreement rippled through the crowd. The villagers were beginning to believe, to the hope that Ijele could be the leader they needed. "But I cannot do this alone," Ijele said, her gaze sweeping across the crowd. "I need you, every one of you, to stand with me. You must be united, strong, and ready to fight. Are you with me?" For a moment there was silence. Then, one by one, the villagers began to nod, to raise their hands in agreement. They were with her. They would fight. Ijele smiled, a fierce and determined smile. She knew that the battle ahead would be difficult, but she also knew that she was not alone. She had her people, her warriors, and together they would be unstoppable. The days that followed were filled with preparations. The men of the village sharpened their weapons, while the women prepared food and supplies for their warriors. Ijele trained her warriors, teaching them the skills and strategies they would need to defeat their enemies. But the threat was closer than they realized. One night, as Ijele and her warriors were gathered round the fire, a scout came running into the camp, his face pale with fear. "They are coming," he gasps. "The enemies are coming." Ijele's heart raced. She knew that this was the moment they had been preparing for, but she also knew that it would not be easy. The enemy was strong and they were ruthless, but she was determined to protect her people, no matter the cost. "Prepare for battle," she ordered, her voice calm and steady. The warriors sprang into action, grabbing their weapons and taking their positions. Ijele stood at the front, her spear in the hand, ready to lead his people into battle. As the enemies approached, the air was thick with tension. The sounds of drums were filled with night, echoing through the forest. Ijele's heart pounded in her chest, but she did not waver. She knew that she had to be strong, that she had to lead by example. The enemy warriors emerged from the trees, their faces twisted in anger and hatred. They were armed with swords and spears, ready to kill anyone who stood in their way. But Ijele was not afraid. She raised her spear high, her voice ringing out over the battlefield. "For Oduke," she shouted, "for our land, our people, our future." The warriors charged forward, their voices raised in battle cry. The clash of weapons filled the air as the two sides met in a fierce and brutal battle. Ijele fought with all her strength, her movements swift and precise. She was a blur of emotions, her spear slicing through the air with deadly accuracy. She fought with the fury of a lioness, protecting her cubs from harm, but the enemy was relentless. They fought with a ferocity that matched Ijele's, and soon the battlefield was littered with the bodies of the fallen. Ijele's heart ached as she saw her warriors fall, one by one. She knew that they were fighting for their lives, for their families, and for their homes. And she knew that she could not let them down. With a fierce cry, Ijele changed forward, her spear aimed at the enemy leader. He was a tall, powerful man with a face twisted in anger and hatred. But Adaeze was not afraid. She knew that this was the moment that would decide the fate of her village. The two villagers clashed, their weapons striking with a force that shook the ground. Ijele fought with all her strength, her heart pounding in her chest. She knew that she could not afford to lose, that the future of her people depended on her victory. With a final powerful strike, Ijele drove her spear into the enemy's leader's chest. He knew. He let out a gasp, his eyes wide with shock, before he fell to the ground, lifeless. For a moment there was silence. Then a cheer rose up from the warriors of Oduke. They had won. They had defeated the enemies. Ijele stood over the fallen leaders, her chest heaving with exhaustion. She has done it. She had protected her people, her village, her home. But as she looked out over the battlefield, at the bodies of her fallen warriors, her heart ached with sorrow. The cost of victory had been high, and she knew that the battle was far from over.